began the way most cases do, with a misunderstanding that hardened into a fact. Fashion has long been seen as a feminine, vain, inconsequential pastime, something shallow, emotional, even dangerous when taken too far. Caring about how one looks for women has been both a duty and a trap. But the deeper I went into the record, it became clearer. Fashion wasn't a decoration, it was jurisdiction, a system built to manage bodies, and women were the primary subjects of that management. What looked shallow was actually structural, a false lead. The first significant clue comes from the great masculine renunciation. Men turning their backs on the frivolities of dress as a response to the structural societal changes, fallen monarchies, and colonies' independence. Abandoning collar, embroidery, anything that suggested display, they walked into a uniform of reason and in that gesture reassigned ornament to women, but only within limits. Because a woman, too adorned, too visible, too aware of her body, could quickly become a threat. Her appearance could dishonor her father if she was unmarried, or her husband if she was. She was decoration, but decoration that had to be controlled. Moving further back, and the record becomes more explicit. Medieval and Renaissance records read like accusations. Women in rich fabrics, saturated dyes, or bold silhouettes were treated as threats to the social order, and religion supplied the motive. Women were split into two suspects: Mary, Immaculate, and Eve, the criminal mastermind of humanity's downfall. And once Eve took the blame, every woman inherited the weight of that suspicion. In Christian thought, it was Eve who offered sin to Adam, and from that moment on, women were made to carry the burden of human weakness. They were to be punished, contained, disciplined. So men became the thinkers, the philosophers, the minds of civilization. Women became the mirrors, the reflection of humankind, polished, adorned, perfected for display. Charles Baudelaire once wrote that nature is crude, violent, imperfect, and that women, by painting their faces, by transforming themselves, elevate nature into artifice, the highest form of beauty. But what he meant as a praise was also a sentence. Women, as a representation of the ideal, the artificial, the decorative, she is beauty, but she's not the one who defines it. As time moved forward, this division took on new shapes. In the 19th century, with industrialization and the strict moral codes of the Victorians, women became symbols of virtue and vice at once. And then, when the wars of the 20th century came and men left for the front, women entered the factories, the offices, the spaces of labor. They gained freedom, but at a cost. To be taken seriously, they had to masculinize themselves. And that's where the suit enters the evidence board. The suit, once the uniform of male intellect and power, became their armor. The tailored jacket, the pressed trousers, the controlled silhouette. These were emblems of reason, intellect, order. And women stepped into the suit as if they were entering somebody else's jurisdiction. They gained access, but only by reaffirming their femininity. Maintaining the tension with the lipstick, the heel, the hair. The lipstick and heels as confirmation of their assigned position. Enough softness to remain a woman, and enough structure to be allowed into the world of men. It was, in essence, cross-dressing as survival. The suit itself tells a story. It is a product of measure and geometry. The word tailleur, from tailler, to cut, to sculpt, defines the tailor as an engineer sculpting cloth around the human form. He calculates, he constructs, he controls. Women, meanwhile, were confined to the softer techniques, draping, adorning, embellishing. The corset, considered a medical device, belonged to the realm of men because it required expertise. It was designed and prescribed by male engineers and doctors to perfect the female body, to reshape it into obedience. Even when women became seamstresses, they worked in the shadows of men. The great couturière, the masculine, was the one who cut, who imagined, who authored. Les petits mains, the little hands, were the women who sewed his vision into being. Madeleine Vionnet draped. She invented the bias caught by feeling, by intuition. Still, the language of mastery remains masculine. And when men began devoting themselves to beauty, to the delicate, to the ornamental, they crossed an invisible line. The male couturier became a paradox, a man doing women's work, engineering desire and elegance for the feminine body. His genius was admired, but his masculinity was suspect. To love beauty, to labor for it, was to risk being feminized. And so we arrive at the crime scene of the fashion's gender complexity. The masculine, reason, structure, authority. Feminine, ornament, emotion, appearance. And those who crossed the line made the system show its cracks. In the last 50 years, the terrain shifted. Women claimed intellectual and creative autonomy. And as they gained ground, many of the feminine markers lost their hold. The high heel became a rare witness. Trousers, once literally illegal for women, became an everyday garment. France didn't repeal a Napoleonic law banning women from wearing pants until 2013, a law that survived 200 years, undone on a single administrative gesture. Women dressing in what was once masculine no longer reads as deviance. What was once transgressive is now ordinary. And what was once cross-dressing is now called comfort, empowerment, minimalism. The codes have shifted, but the underlying logic persists. Power remains coded through the aesthetics of masculinity, structure, control. By how much a woman can discard her own adornment without being punished for it. And while women moved towards the masculine, men began loosening their own boundaries. Menswear softened, fabrics gained movement, color returned in measured doses. The old uniform of reason began to breathe again. It's easy to forget that the masculine uniform was never about style or elegance. It was about discipline. In the 1800s, the rational dress movement main focus was mainly women's dress concerns. However, in the unsettled years between the two world wars, men's dress became a site for ideological struggle. Amidst the economical instability, the memory of mass mobilization, health concerns, mainly because of the pandemic, there were fears of social softening, and the debates took on moral and national weight. In 1931, the professional journal Taylor & Couture warned that
a loosening of bonds will gradually impel mankind to sag and drop bodily and spiritually. If laces are unfastened, ties loosened, and buttons banished, the whole structure of modern dress will come undone. Society will fall to pieces.
A year later, in 1932, during a public debate prompted by the Men's Dress Reform Party in London, which questioned the physical, social, and moral cost of modern male dress, Dr. Anthony Bradley defended the same principle.
The man who, alone in the jungle, changes into his dinner jacket, does so to convince himself that he is not a savage. Soft, floppy clothes are symbolic of a soft, floppy race. The sturdy and virile man is capable of withstanding the rigors of a stiff shirt.
Dress was civilization in itself, the visible proof of control. To undress was to risk regression, to be savages. We are not merely witnessing aesthetic change. We are watching the slow unbinding of the social corset. The fear that the Taylor and Couture voiced over a century ago, that society will collapse if men's clothes softened, is precisely what is being tested now. And perhaps that is a quiet revolution of our times. Women freeing themselves from ornament, and men freeing themselves from rigidity, both crossing boundaries that once defined them. The suit and the dress, the lace and the button, they're no longer opposite poles, but fragments of the same story, of gender both as a tool that built society and the weapon that shaped it. And if society once feared that it would fall to pieces, maybe it's time we see what we can build from those fragments. Anyways, toodaloops.